Assalamu alaikum. This is your brother Malcolm Flex TV. How's my family? How's my family? Yes sir, yes sir. We in the building. We in the building. Your brother came up with another video, another topic at hand that is very important. You know, I try not to do any videos that's really not that doesn't have, is not a worthy topic, you know what I mean? So I always try to come up with worthy topics that are worthy of your time, because I know your time is important and I know your time is precious. And so this has been a topic that has been latent on your brother's heart. So first I would like to open in the name of Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. I also like to bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is his last and greatest messenger and exalted Christ. And I also like to bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a divine warner, teacher in our midst. And I would like to greet you all, the viewers, my family, with the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. And first I would like to send some shout outs to all my brothers and sisters on their platforms. You know, brothers and sisters is doing big things. So I would like to first shout out my brother Ben X. Shout out to brother Asiatic Black. Shout out to Information Man Show. Shout out to brother Netiquette. I just recently did a live podcast with him probably a few days ago. Shout out to our sisters, Fly Nubian Queens. Shout out to our dear brother Maurice Muhammad. Shout out to brother Riza Islam. Shout out to brother student minister Tony Muhammad, student minister Dr. Wesley Muhammad, student minister Nori, and everybody on the minister's research team. Walaikum salam. I'm going to shout out brothers and sisters in the chat. Reverend Chevelle X, peace to you, family. And walaikum salam to Black Study Collective. And yeah, and shout out to all my brothers and sisters. I love y'all, and if I left you out, please forgive your brother. You know, I just wanted to enter into a very important topic. You know, and I named this video, Flint, Michigan still has a water crisis. Okay? It's been 3 years and some months since Flint, Michigan was declared an emergency state. Okay? And I've been in contact with brothers and sisters in Michigan, more specifically in Flint, Michigan, and just by word of mouth, they're saying that we still have a water crisis down there. You know, the situation did not get better. Okay? And I have witnesses. So this is just part 1 to the video. Inshallah, God willing, part 2, we'll be able to do live interviews of brothers and sisters who are actually boots on the ground, who are actually in Michigan, who's actually in Flint, and they can give actual accounts of what's been taking place. Okay, and so inshallah we'll be able to get them on. Okay, and at this moment I'm going to do it, you know, kind of like a presentation. And what I want to do is show brothers and sisters, you know, how the situation got to where it got. Okay, because a lot of people are familiar with the Flint, Michigan crisis, have heard about the Flint, Michigan crisis, but don't know exactly how things came about. So I don't know if any of you brothers and sisters had a chance to see Fahrenheit 11/9 by producer director Michael Moore. Okay, he created a very profound documentary about Donald Trump's election, and he shows and proves that Donald Trump basically became president by accident. This man never really meant to become president. You know, he never really had intentions on becoming president. You know, it was really a stunt that Donald Trump actually became president. You know, so that was the main focus of the documentary. But if you go and watch the documentary, it is basically also talking about the Flint, Michigan water crisis, okay? And that was one major thing that stuck with me, because we have a lot of brothers and sisters who have suffered and who is still suffering in Flint, Michigan, okay? So I'm going to put together a little video presentation for all those to actually learn about what happened, the science on what happened, and who are the players. You know, you have many people involved. Even Barack Obama was somewhat involved, or by him being the president of the United States, he really didn't do anything to change or help the situation. And now that Donald J. Trump is in office, he has also done very little to help our dear brothers and sisters in Flint, Michigan, and the residents in Flint, Michigan. So like I said, I put together a video presentation. So family, if you would just be a little patient with your brother, we're going to go into some of these videos, and I'm going to bring up some receipts, and the rabbit hole goes deep. I got a lot of good information. You know, if you can share this video, we want people to actually see this video, okay? Because like I said, it's a lot of good information. I didn't really promote this video like I normally do my other videos, but I'm just doing this on the fly, you know, and seeing who's all my real supporters. So I thank you, brothers and sisters, for tapping in. But we about to get into this presentation, if you will. So 1 second.
Extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
Trump loves the strong man, the autocrat, the dictator. Take these two strongman CEOs. They go way back. The one on the right became the governor of Michigan before the one on the left became the president of the United States. Before Donald J. Trump would be unleashed on the world, we here in Michigan got a coming attraction for what you would all soon experience. It began in 2010 when a Republican named Rick Snyder was elected governor of Michigan. He had no experience in public service, but he was very, very good at foosball.
Oh, not again!
And he was very, very rich. He had been CEO of Gateway Computers. You remember, right? The piece of shit computer. And he told the voters of my state that he was going to run Michigan like a business.
I was hired to serve our citizens. They're my customers.
Ah, yes. We're the customers. The customers of the big business that he was running. The ones that would pay for his billion-dollar tax break for the rich.
The Michigan business tax is gone.
Emboldened by his victory, he was not satisfied with just being governor. He wanted more power. And how do you get more power? You scare the people and declare an emergency.
Governor Rick Snyder appoints an emergency manager.
Prop 1, the emergency financial manager.
Flint citizens got their emergency manager.
And it is official.
State police and a security team out to try and keep peace.
The emergency manager bill is now a law.
Governor Snyder signed the emergency manager law.
Even though there was no emergency. He staged a coup. He removed from power the elected mayors and city councils of Detroit, Flint, Pontiac, and Benton Harbor, and installed his cronies to run them in the way that he saw fit.
So real quick, family, they just showed how Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan basically got rid of the mayors and city councils, okay, so he can basically have full control of certain areas in Michigan, mainly black populated areas, okay. He basically staged a coup in his own state, okay, to where someone can't get him impeached or make him resign from this seat or this particular post in Michigan, okay? This was the first move that Rick Snyder made, okay? Brother David X. Jones said, we love you, dear brother. Keep up the good work. I support every video. Allah is God. The white man is the devil. All of them. Stand with your nation. Victory is in sight. Allahu Akbar. And Brother Real Eye says, Salam, Malcolm Flex. Walaikum salam, family. Okay, we got another fire video. And we about to continue bringing these receipts. I got a gang of receipts because I want people to know how Flint got in this condition that it's in, and those who are involved, okay, and how we need to bring awareness to the situation, because this can happen to us in our community. So the rabbit hole goes very deep, okay? The rabbit hole goes very deep, okay? So let me continue, family.
This was a premeditated plan to reduce and privatize public services so that corporate people like him could make more money.
People don't think that this is happening in the United States. If you don't say like Flint, Michigan, and you just say the powers of this person, like they'll think like it's Honduras. This is a way to target black and brown communities.
It was a king. The governor put a king into the city of Flint, and he ruled without being responsible to anyone.
Look at the cities in Michigan that are under emergency management.
The ones the governor took over.
The governor took over. At one point, 50% of African Americans in the state were under emergency management, compared to 2% of whites.
Governor Snyder's idea to remove democracy from Michigan's black cities so impressed the future president that he came to offer his support.
Can you share your thought on an emergency manager situation that's still unfolding in our city?
Well, that is unfolding. I've been reading about the emergency manager, and my attitude is whatever it takes to make that next step. You know, we could say this maybe a little bit about the country. Whatever it takes to get it to the next step is what I would support.
Governor Snyder wanted to flex his new autocratic powers. He saw an opportunity to take advantage of the poorest city in the country and of the largest source of fresh water in the world. Option A was that he could just leave well enough alone. After all, for 5 decades, the city of Flint got its water from Lake Huron, a 10,000-year-old pure glacial lake, water delivered to Flint through publicly owned pipelines. Or there was option B. Why not build a new, completely unnecessary pipeline that would benefit investors, his major campaign donors, and banks like Wells Fargo? The only catch was that while the new pipeline was being built, Flint would have to switch over from Lake Huron to the industrial sewage ditch known as the Flint River.
Now, family, I hope you are paying attention to close detail and nuance. So what they just showed that Rick Snyder, he cut off the clean, pure water, the clean and pure glacier water from Lake Huron, and took a pipe from the Flint, Michigan River. Okay, and he's filtering water from the Flint, Michigan River to Flint, Michigan, and this is the type of water that the people of Flint are drinking. They are drinking unsanitized, unfiltered, you know what I'm saying, toxic water. And we're going to show you how toxic this water actually is. Let me show you how wicked this enemy is, all just for corporate interests.
We believe there was a significant financial fraud that drove this.
Was it for the benefit of the local unit of government or for the individual?
Individuals.
Individuals are doing it for themselves.
Yes. You know, I believe greed drove this.
In April of 2014, the governor switched the city of Flint's drinking water to the Flint River.
Here's the Flint. Here's the Flint.
Here is his team toasting each other over what would amount to, in essence, a slow-motion ethnic cleansing.
3, 2, 1.
Some residents are wondering, will we see a change?
No, the average resident won't notice any difference.
Look down in there.
Within days, the average residents noticed a difference. A big difference.
That's nasty.
Their hair started to fall out. Skin rashes appeared all over their bodies. And the children got sick. Parents whose children showed no symptoms were still worried that they might be sick. Because as one doctor noticed, nearly every child had ingested lead.
There is no safe level of lead in a body of anybody. There is no safe level of lead. It is potent and it is irreversible, which means once it is in your blood, it wreaks havoc.
You mean irreversible?
So basically, this water that the residents of Flint, Michigan is drinking is toxic, and it is full with lead. And the doctors are saying that once the individual drink this water, his whole body will be contaminated with lead, and he or she will have this for the rest of their lives, and lead will wreak havoc on the human body. Okay, Brother Real Eyes asks, where can he get the video clip? The video clip is actually, I'm showing a documentary that was made by Michael Moore as Black Study Collective rightfully quoted. It's called Fahrenheit 11/9. If you haven't seen it, family, you gotta watch it. It is very profound. Okay, it's about a 2-hour long lecture. I just watched it a few nights ago, and it touched my heart on what's actually taking place in this country, man. What's going on in Flint, man, is a great injustice, and we need to figure out how we can have a solution to this problem. Walaikum salam, Brother Danubian, man. My brother's in the house, man. Good to see you, family. Okay, so let me kind of get back to this presentation, because this stuff is very important, y'all.
Their hair started to fall out. Skin rashes appeared all over their bodies. And the children got sick. Parents whose children showed no symptoms were still worried that they might be sick. Because as one doctor noticed, nearly every child had ingested lead.
There is no safe level of lead in a body of anybody. There is no safe level of lead. It is potent and it is irreversible, which means once it is in your blood, it wreaks havoc.
You mean irreversible for how long?
Forever. It literally drops IQ levels of children. It leads to impulse disorder and then memory issues, violent behavior, aggressiveness. It also impacts your DNA. Moms exposed to lead, you can see the DNA changes in their grandchildren.
Word of the developing disaster reached the governor's office. And so he quietly dispatched an aide to Flint to find out what exactly was going on. The report came back with bad news. The state investigator recommended switching immediately back to the Lake Huron water. But the governor seemed to have other thoughts, like getting PR people to make the problem go away.
Water that is leaving the plant is always assured to be at the top notch of quality.
For the governor, there was an even greater tragedy. The Flint River water was corroding the auto parts at the General Motors factory. When the governor heard this, he blew his top. After all, General Motors had donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Republican Governors Association to help elect candidates like Rick Snyder. And here he was, damaging their property. For Governor Snyder, that was a bridge too far. He immediately ordered the water in Flint to be switched back to Lake Huron, but only for the General Motors factory. The people of Flint would continue to drink the poisoned water. Nobody's going to believe this, that the one GM factory that's remaining here in Flint, they got to hook back up to the fresh, clean Lake Huron water, and everybody else.
And we were like, well, what's happening to our bodies? And they were like, they went back to, it's safe as meeting all federal and state guidelines. And that was like the drum.
But the auto parts that had to be washed in the factory had to have the clean, pure water.
Yeah.
From Lake Huron.
Yeah, because profit reigns supreme. We didn't own General Motors. That's why we didn't get like the clean, safe water.
So, you know, Trump is looking at this whole Flint water poisoning, and he's got to be thinking, wow, the governor got away with poisoning a majority black city? What will I be able to get away with?
Look at my African American over here. Look at him.
Family. So it just explained, okay? They just explained that when they stopped funneling water from Lake Huron, where the pure water was, and start bringing in that water from the Flint River, okay? And the water from the Flint River started to make people's hair fall out. They started to get skin rashes all over their bodies. And the doctor said that the majority of the babies, the children, have drunk the water. So now there are thousands of babies in Flint, Michigan, who has lead poisoning that they will live with for the rest of their lives. And this devil is so wicked that when he found out that General Motors, okay, was getting messed up, that their products were getting messed up by the water from the Flint River, they had an issue with Governor Rick Snyder. So what he did was he fixed the problem for General Motors so they can have clean, pure water for their automotive parts. Okay? So if it was messing up automotive parts for General Motors, imagine what that water is doing to the human body. Imagine what it's doing to the human body. You know what I'm saying? Look how wicked that this enemy is just for money. But let me continue, because I got some more clips that I want brothers and sisters to see. Because we're going to go into the science as well of what lead does to the body and what's going on in Flint. Hold on.
Ominous change in the water was particularly noticeable at bath time.
My youngest would tell me, Mom, it's yellow and it's a filmy, gross, foamy thing, and it would smell like open sewer. But we were being told we're still getting used to the new system. It's safe. It's okay.
But it wasn't okay. Far from it. Flint's tap water was laced with dangerous levels of lead. The state knew about it and did nothing.
The trouble began 2 years ago when the state decided to switch Flint from Detroit's drinking water to a new system. But the new system wouldn't be ready for 2 years. In the meantime, to save money, they switched to the Flint River water.
3, 2, 1.
That first decision turned out to be a mistake, as did nearly every step the state took after it. Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality shoulders much of the blame, what a preliminary task force report calls an abysmal public response. At the time, the state agency told Flint it didn't have to add an anti-corrosive agent to the water, saying it was not necessary until 2 6-month monitoring periods had been conducted. In other words, they were willing to wait a year to see whether the water was safe. All the while, highly corrosive river water flowed through the city's lead pipes, leaching lead and other dangerous metals into the water supply, and what came out of the tap in many homes was toxic. Almost immediately, residents started complaining. Their water was brown. Some people developed rashes, became sick. Early tests revealed fecal coliform bacteria. So the city and state officials added chlorine to the water supply and told people to boil their water. Both mistakes which can actually increase the level of lead.
I built this place with my tax money.
At city meetings, residents were repeatedly told the water was safe.
We found the worst lead and water contamination that I have seen in 25 years, and believe me, I've seen a lot.
Residents didn't find out about the lead until this man stepped in. Mark Edwards is a Virginia Tech researcher who tested the water early last year.
It was very scary to see the levels of lead that were hazardous waste, levels of lead coming out of her tap water.
That's right. The lead levels in one home were so high, water from the tap could be considered hazardous waste. His testing led to this EPA memo, an interim report which was leaked last summer. It said the high levels of lead in the water were especially alarming because the state's water testing was flawed, so the true lead levels were probably much higher.
We were just waiting for the appropriate authorities to help Flint residents to enforce federal law.
When Flint's former mayor asked the EPA for more information, he was shot down, as you can see in this email exchange obtained by CNN. The EPA regional director writes, "The preliminary draft report should not have been released outside the agency, and that only when the report is revised and fully vetted will it be shared with the city." But that wouldn't happen until months later. Meanwhile, families were still drinking water poisoned with lead. The EPA blames the state, saying in a statement to CNN, what happened in Flint should not have happened, and that the EPA's ability to oversee was impacted by failures and resistance at the state and local levels. The state was continuing with its own mistakes, according to Mark Edwards, butchering around a water testing. They not only tested the wrong homes, but altered the reports, eliminating tests from 2 homes that would have shown toxic levels of lead. The state says the changes were legitimate.
They fabricated a report that made it appear like Flint was passing the lead and copper rule with flying colors.
In the fall, the government admitted that there was lead in the water and Flint was switched back to Detroit's water supply. But it wasn't until earlier this month that the state of Michigan started bringing in bottled water and declared a state of emergency.
family. So what we about to do now is I'm going to show you the sister who was the whistleblower in this whole scheme. Because just as the people on the news, how they reported that the enemy fabricated that the lead levels were lower and the water was safe to drink in paperwork. They used paperwork saying that the water was safe to drink, and they lowered the actual lead level. The lead level was 3.5. The lead level was 3.5. But let me show you the sister who was the whistleblower and exposed the whole plot of what these enemies did. And inshallah, if I can get in contact with this sister, I will also interview her. So hang on just for a second.
Enough and give up. But as the people of Flint protested, the governor and his spokespeople kept lying about the water.
This is certainly a situation that deserves attention. I do not think that it rises to the level of a statewide emergency.
Why not?
There's just we are here with the resources necessary to address the situation without that declaration.
Anyone who is concerned about lead in the drinking water in Flint can relax. There is no broad problem right now that we've seen with lead in the drinking water in Flint.
Let's get the facts, let's keep working this, and let's remember, water isn't the only source of lead, and so we need to make sure we're encouraging people to look at other places that could create a threat.
I actually started working for the health department November of 2015.
This is April Cook Hawkins. She was asked to participate in the cover-up.
I was the case manager here in Flint, Michigan. All of the results in regards to the blood levels, I inputted those numbers and made sure all of those numbers were correct.
And while doing so, she discovered that the government officials had cooked the books.
My supervisor asked if I would go in and help them out with the numbers and not show certain things. If someone came in and they test high, the health department didn't want that number to be shown.
She began secretly making printouts of the falsified records and was afraid to show them to anyone until she brought them to me.
Is this an actual document that you kept as a piece of evidence?
Yes. The normal number is 3.5, and anything over 3.5 is considered a high lead level. 6, 6, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 7, 10, 6, 8, 6, 6, 14.
Not a single number that says 3.5 or lower?
No.
That means every child on this sheet of paper has an elevated level of lead.
Yeah. And I said, so let's just call the parents and retest. And they said, no, we can't do that. Just put them in as a 3.5 then.
And so the parents aren't able to start taking immediate action to help the child that's been lead poisoned?
They think their child is fine.
And they,
My child tested low.
You knew these parents were getting letters that were not telling the truth?
Correct. Just put them in as a 3.5 then.
And you said?
I said, no, I couldn't do it. And that's when things kind of hit the fan for me.
Somebody told somebody to do this, to cover up what the state was really up to.
Yes.
I look at the lifestyles of the kids that's being born into this. You know what they know? They know a bottle of water and a toothbrush and toothpaste is normal.
That's how I brush my teeth in Iraq. I took bottled water showers in Iraq. So I compare how I live now, how I lived in Iraq as far as when it comes to water. I had more water supply in Iraq than I did now.
And we need to not have the highest water bills in the nation, especially since Michigan has 85% of the nation's fresh surface water, 20% of the world. You know, then there's people who have to choose between their water bill or medication. water bill or childcare, water bill or car note, water bill or rent. When you have the highest water rates in the nation and the poorest city in the nation statistically, who has time to protest? You may want to, but you have to feed your family.
So, brothers and sisters, we just showed a sister who was a whistleblower, and they were trying to get her to sell out her own people. They were trying to get her to cook the books, okay, and change the numbers, okay, and basically force feed people this water from the Flint River that was toxic and contaminated with lead and other contaminants, okay, other contaminants, you know, and the cold part about it, Michigan has one of the highest water bills in Michigan. So the individuals, I mean, the brothers and sisters there, they like, man, you know, we want to protest, but also, you know, we can barely live here because there aren't really a whole lot of jobs here. You know, and I got brothers who once lived in LA and moved to Michigan, Detroit, specifically bear witness. You know, and they tell us all the time, you know, that because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us that we need to go there and buy up the block. You know what I'm saying? Go and buy these rundown houses and rebuild them, and let's create a community for us and our people. You know what I mean? But one of the main things that they always say is that it's hard to find work there. I don't live there, but this is just what your brother heard from other individuals who actually live there. Okay, so they gotta work and then pay these high bills, and then they paying high bills for water and getting contaminated water, family. They not even getting fresh water, and this problem is still going on today with a tyrannical governor by the name of Rick Snyder. Okay, but let me kind of continue because closer to the end, I got some heat for y'all. Okay, so hold on one second. Let me share my screen with you.
President Obama met with the mayors of Flint, Michigan at the White House today as the White House widened its response to the lead contamination in the city's water supply. The administration naming an official from the Department of Health and Human Services to coordinate federal efforts to help Flint deal with the crisis. Dr. Nicole Lurie will travel there tomorrow. As for President Obama, who's expected to attend the Detroit Auto Show tomorrow, the White House says there are no plans for him to travel to Flint. The president has already declared a federal emergency in Flint, which allows for up to $5 million in aid. Mr. Obama, however, has denied a federal disaster declaration, which would free up more money. The head of FEMA, Craig Fugate, noting that Flint's water contamination does not meet the legal definition of a major disaster under federal law. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder announcing at a State of the State address tonight, just an hour ago, he will appeal that decision. In the meantime, the two leading researchers on this water crisis who are sounding the alarm for months say they believe a Legionnaire's disease outbreak in the area, which sickened over 80 people and killed 10, is related to the city's water contamination crisis. This, as NBC News reports that emails made public through records requests show that officials from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency knew as far back as February 2015 that Flint residents may be drinking water with high levels of lead. When NBC News contacted the EPA today, the federal agency admitted authorities had not moved quickly enough.
In April 2014, Flint switched from Detroit's water supply to save money. Immediately, there were complaints about its taste and smell. In February 2015, the first test showed elevated lead levels. Officials insisted the water was safe. But that June, an EPA official wrote a report warning that the lack of any treatment for lead is of serious concern. Officials discussed those concerns but took no action, while children and others continued drinking the water. In September 2015, independent researchers discovered alarming levels of lead in children's blood. 6 days later, the governor publicly acknowledged the problem. It wasn't until this month, nearly 2 years later, that the governor declared a state of emergency and asked for federal help.
Just moments ago, in his State of the State address, Governor Snyder called for accountability on the matter.
For those whose mistakes contributed to this disaster, we are fully cooperating with investigations and will hold those individuals accountable. And let me be perfectly clear to all of state government. In situations like this, they must come to my desk immediately, no delays, no excuses, period.
Joining me now, a man who's called for Governor Snyder's arrest, filmmaker and son of Flint, Michael Moore. It is a great pleasure to have you here. I wish it was under better circumstances for your hometown.
Well, thanks for having me on here, Chris. And the governor, just now listening to that, he's appealing. He wants it declared a disaster area, and it should be. And who should know better than this governor, because he created the disaster. He admitted today. I said on Saturday, I said this is his Katrina. But actually, that I was wrong in saying that, and today he admitted it is his Katrina. But Bush didn't create the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, there was, in the sense of Katrina, there was an actual storm that was mismanaged. There was no storm that hit.
There was no storm here. This was clean water we were drinking since I was age of 10 in Flint. We were drinking this water in Genesee County. I came from Lake Huron. I just want to point out, when they say Detroit water, we were on the Detroit water. That's just because it's filtered through the plant in Detroit.
Right. It comes from a water system, but it's coming from the lake.
It comes from a glacial lake.
Right.
That's been there since the Ice Age. It was created during the Ice Age 10,000 years ago. It's a pure body of water. It's the third largest body of fresh water in the world. That's what we have access to in Michigan. The fact that this would, the irony, irony isn't even the right word. It would be happening to us in Michigan is just so, it's so outrageous. And the thing is that the governor knew about this. The governor, his office, his people, his so-called environmental office, all packed with cronies, not real scientists or real environmentalists. They did this to the people of Flint, and I have been calling for Attorney General Lynch to investigate, arrest, prosecute him for a crime that was committed, a crime of both fraud, of covering up, and of polluting the water. You got to understand this. People of Flint were drinking this clean water from Lake Huron. He wanted to save money. He removed the mayor and the city council because the town had gone bankrupt. And
he did this to a bunch of municipalities throughout Michigan using very controversial emergency manager law.
And you guys here at MSNBC, and especially Rachel. Yep. Rachel has covered this so-called emergency manager thing from the beginning. She's covered this story from the beginning. She could literally get elected to anything in Flint right now because people are so grateful because nobody in the national media was covering this in the way that you guys have covered this. So now here we're at this impasse. He sent in the National Guard last Wednesday. We've heard that on the news. But I was there in Flint this week. He sent 7 National Guard, 7. And they were all from Flint. He just activated 7 people from Flint
to hand out water bottles.
7 people who were already poisoned because they've been drinking the water for the last 2 years in Flint to hand out bottles of water to their fellow poisoned citizens. There's been no big movement to do anything about this. They've had a few state police handing out these bottles. This is all PR. The speech tonight he gave was PR. And President Obama, I just don't know what I could do to convince him. He's going to be walking through the Detroit Auto Show tomorrow, looking at all the bright, shiny cars, all the futuristic cars that the automakers are planning to put out there in the next few years. And we're like a 10-minute helicopter ride from Detroit. You know, if he would just come to Flint, you know, don't fly into Detroit and fly out of Detroit and over and have that George Bush moment of looking out the window at Flint. We need his presence there, not just his doctor that he's sending, and we're grateful for that from the Health and Human Services Department, but we need his active presence, and they need to declare it a disaster area.
Flint has been a sort of afterthought in a lot of ways for a lot of people for a long time in the sort of process of deindustrialization. It's been hit by a million different troubles and problems visited upon it since the car jobs left. It was striking to me, Marco Rubio was asked on the campaign trail about this issue, which is now, it's on the nightly news. It's no longer.
Excuse me, family, if you can hear echo, I accidentally left the mic on, so my bad. Just let me know if the sound changes. If you hear it echo when I play future videos, just let me know, because I don't want it echoing while you're listening, so it can be an inconvenience. So if there's an echo, just let me know. But before I show you, brothers and sisters, proof. Although I love Obama, you know what I'm saying? That's our brother. We respect the brother. You know, when he ran for president, I and many others have voted for the brother. But let me show you how much of a sellout the brother actually is. But before I show you this clip from the documentary Fahrenheit 11/9, before I show you this on President Obama, I want you to see the science on, because like Michael Moore stated in that clip, that Rick Snyder, he doesn't have any scientists or anybody that actually knows what's going on scientifically. You know what I'm saying? He only has cronies and business partners that he is dealing with on this. But let your brother show you the science, because Islam is mathematics, and mathematics is Islam, and it also is science. And we are scientists, and we deal with science, and even Satan is a scientist. Okay, so let me kind of just go into the science for you all, family, if that's okay.
In April of 2014, under the control of an emergency manager appointed by the state of Michigan to help the city through an ongoing financial crisis, Flint, Michigan switched its water supply. For decades, the city's water had been piped in from the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, which got its water from Lake Huron and treated it. But in April of 2013, the decision was made to build a pipeline and connect to a new system, the Carignan Water Authority. This would supply the city with lake water that Flint would treat instead of Detroit, and was estimated to save $200 million over 25 years. In the meantime, as a sort of temporary fix, while the pipeline was being built, water would come in from the Flint River and be treated at Flint's water treatment plant. Now, 4 years after that switch, we know that it damaged hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure, caused deadly bacterial outbreaks that killed at least 12 people, and exposed thousands of children to high levels of lead in their drinking water. There are places to learn about the story of how this happened, was covered up, and was eventually recognized, and the underlying situations that caused these massive mistakes to be made. So let's talk about the science of water, and how something as seemingly simple as switching to a different source of water could lead to so many bad, but also seemingly unrelated outcomes. Humans have actually been using lead pipes in water systems for hundreds of years, dating back to the ancient Romans. We eventually moved on to using other materials like iron, but in the late 1800s, engineers in the US were all about lead, because lead pipes were easier to bend around obstacles and were a bit more durable than iron. People were suffering from lead poisoning, but the public health risks weren't seriously acknowledged until around the 1920s, and we gradually stopped making new water pipes from lead. But in lots of cities in the US, like Flint, Michigan, there are still several different kinds of metals in pipes for water. In Flint's case, the pipes are made of lead and iron. The US Environmental Protection Agency didn't have any sort of serious regulation about lead pipes until the lead and copper rule was enacted in 1991. It requires regular monitoring and action plans if old lead pipes start becoming dangerous. So all that to say, lead water pipes are not that unusual. A 2016 study estimates that there are still millions in use. And even though no amount of lead ingested by a human is considered safe, maybe surprisingly, many of these water systems are usually safe. A big part of the reason why is anti-corrosion chemicals in the water, like orthophosphate. Orthophosphate helps lead and some other metal pipes from corroding by forming a compound that makes a sort of protective layer on the inside of the pipe. If that layer is patchy or missing, then electron-stealing chemicals called oxidants, like dissolved oxygen gas, can react with the lead. And when that happens, the lead will dissolve into the water and contaminate it. You've probably heard of that. It's known as leaching. And it's when things get dangerous for people who need this water to drink or shower or do anything with on their bodies. Flint, and it is unclear why, besides possibly cutting costs, did not add orthophosphate or any sort of anti-corrosion chemicals when switching to Flint River water, even though the treated water from Detroit had them. And because Flint was using iron and lead pipes, both iron and lead ended up in the water. But that's not the whole story. Not only were these pipes left unprotected, but the water flowing through them also contained higher than average chloride levels. Researchers found that chloride helps the process of corrosion along. When there are enough chloride ions in the water compared to some other ions, they start forming chemical complexes with lead and other atoms. And these chloride complexes are soluble. So basically, it's another way that lead can get into the water. Part of this too much chloride problem was from the river water itself. Sodium chloride, which is just table salt, would often wash into the river after being used as a de-icer on roads. But another part of it had to do with the fact that a couple of months after the switch to the Flint River water, there was also a huge bacterial problem. The river water wasn't just like extremely dangerous, though. We know how to treat water. We put in disinfectants, like chlorine, which can rip open bacteria or mess with the molecules inside them. But it turns out that chlorine disinfectant can react with metals from corroding pipes, especially iron, to become completely different compounds that do absolutely nothing to control bacteria. So the disinfectants were made useless. Plus, more chloride ions ended up floating around, which only made the corrosion process worse. And thus, the vicious cycle escalated. By August of 2014, there was a city warning that E. coli and other typically gut-dwelling bacteria, collectively called fecal coliform bacteria, were thriving in the water and could make people sick. The Flint treatment plant upped the amount of chlorine they were using to try to kill off these contaminants, but because the pipes were already corroding, it wasn't working. Not only that, but all this extra chlorine they were adding also reacted with some of the organic chemicals from the river water to form disinfection byproducts called trihalomethanes. And researchers have found trihalomethanes to be linked to health problems and even cancer. So not only was the chlorine turning into a bunch of non-disinfectant chemicals, one of those was potentially a carcinogen. Trihalomethanes in the water quickly swelled to above the national regulatory limit. So to try and fix that problem, the treatment plant added coagulants that would react with the organic matter in the water to help them filter it out. Specifically, they used a chemical called ferric chloride, which took care of the trihalomethanes, but meant they were adding even more chloride to the water. As the pipes got worse and more chlorine was turned into useless compounds, the elevated bacterial levels became deadly. Between April 2014 and October 2015, at least 12 people died and 91 people got sick from an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, the third largest recorded in U.S. history. Before the switch to the Flint River water, there were only a handful of cases per year. Legionnaire's disease is basically a really intense pneumonia. It's caused by breathing in waterborne bacteria that infect the lungs so they get inflamed and lead to other symptoms. This outbreak was caused by a bacterium called Legionella pneumophila, specifically the serogroup 6 strain, which isn't usually detected in the standard urine test for the disease. After some extensive studies, most researchers agree that this chlorine inactivation at least played a part in letting these bacteria flourish. On top of that, some of the experts and investigative journalists think that there could have been more deaths than were officially confirmed because of how tricky it can be to diagnose Legionnaire's disease. Some deaths caused by these bacteria could have been attributed to pneumonia in general and thus not counted. So counterintuitive as it might seem, not adding corrosion control also deactivated the chlorine disinfectant to basically undetectable levels, resulting in